The world is always full of turmoil. I almost miss my daily dose of chaos. God's grace is praised because, in the end, the heroes always prevail. They face great hardship, defeat their enemies, and emerge victorious. Meanwhile, those enemies, after being defeated, disappear, leaving behind notorious evil organizations. One such organization is called Death's Shadow. This story begins in the depths of this darkness, within its ranks, where our protagonist, Serena R. LaVale, resides. Serena was assigned to the 5th Training Center, and though she's waiting for class to begin, she'd rather be anywhere else, specifically, at the 1st Training Center that focuses on swordsmanship. The 5th Training Center is, well, unpopular, to say the least. It focuses on survival methods, and let's just say the training is grueling and, frankly, feels pretty useless. But above all, the reason people avoid it is because of the instructor. This man, with an inflexible attitude and razor-sharp eyes, is famous for being the coldest heart in all of Death's Shadow. They call him the Ice Devil. His icy stare alone could freeze your soul. In a cold, stern voice, he calls out, "Number 23, step forward." The girl stiffens. That's her. Her heart pounds as she steps forward. He orders her to draw her sword and attack. Number 23 makes an attack stance, already feeling uneasy. She's decent with a sword, but this is the first time she'll face the instructor. Serena can't help but think he's underestimating her. He looks too calm, as if he's not even trying. Determined to prove herself, Number 23 quickly unsheathes her sword and charges. But with a single motion, he knocks her weapon from her hand, sending it clattering to the ground. Number 23 is shocked, completely flabbergasted. She falls, the defeat as sudden as it was unexpected. "Fool," he says, his voice colder than ice. "What was your mistake?" Shaken, she blurts out, "I let go of my sword." The instructor's face hardens, and he glares at the other students. Does anyone have a better answer? The group remains silent. No one dares offer an answer that could be wrong. Serena raises her hand, with no hesitant ion. She swung her sword and gave up. The instructor's expression doesn't change, but he mutters, "Not stupid, but still wrong." Then, without warning, he attacks her using the same motion Number 23 had just used. Serena reacts instinctively, countering his strike with precise timing, but she injures him. "Now do you understand your mistake?" he asks, his eyes sharp with scrutiny. Serena replies cautiously, "You risk getting cut to deliver a fatal blow." The Ice Devil shakes his head. "Wrong again." He points his sword at her neck. "The shadow slash technique that you all know is a single mortal blow. You cannot block or dodge while using it. If you fail to deliver the attack properly, you die. So, if you're not confident you can kill your opponent in one strike, don't use it. If you fail, you don't deserve to be alive." In that moment, Serena realizes just how much she had underestimated his skill. He wasn't just another instructor, he was far beyond her level. She listens closely now, determined to learn. He orders the group to run 20 laps around the courtyard, then practice techniques 1 through 18 100 times each. Serena feels the exhaustion setting in just thinking about it. For Number 23 and Number 27, it's 150 times each, the instructor barks. "Yes, sir," they reply, trying to hide their dismay. Running laps in the large courtyard and practicing hundreds of sword techniques is torturous, but no one dares complain. The instructor watches over them like a hawk, his cold expression never wavering. Even after being injured, he doesn't leave to get treated. This man is a mystery wrapped in an enigma, and Serena is just beginning to understand how dangerous he truly is. As Serena runs, the realization hits her: she lost because she underestimated him. But thanks to this lesson, she's learned more about the mortal blow technique, and now, she's one step closer to reviving her family's legacy. She no longer regrets being assigned to the 5th Training Center. Meanwhile, the instructor, Kane S. Ronard, the lowest-ranking instructor in Death's Shadow, grumbles internally. His shoulder aches from the blow, and it really hurts. He used to be a top villain back in his day, but now? He's washed up, stuck teaching newbies who think they can beat him. And yet this girl, number 7, managed to wound him. She's no ordinary recruit. Kane's mind spins. Hero material, he thinks, but with annoyance. What's a promising talent like her doing in an evil organization like Death's Shadow? Maybe she's a spy. As he mulls over the idea, Serena turns and glances at him, surprising him with a smirk. What's she smiling at? Kane wonders. I'm dying here, she continues her training with that smug look on her face, and Kane knows deep down that she's going to be a problem, a big problem. He sighs. He was hoping for a quiet, peaceful life as a washed-up villain, but with her around, that dream seems impossible. Later, as the students finish their exhausting drills, Serena keeps swinging her sword, pushing herself to the limit. Her energy is gone, but Kane is still watching her with those cold eyes. She's convinced it's his gaze that's motivating her, but Kane's just waiting for her to give up so he can go get his injury treated and grab a snack. Serena is determined, though, and won't quit. Kane grumbles internally. Why is she so stubborn? It's not like he's getting paid extra for staying late. Finally, she collapses from exhaustion. Kane calls it a day and watches the students leave, but Serena's passed out cold. With a sigh, Kane slings her over his shoulder. Why do I have to do this? I'm the instructor, not her personal taxi. His shoulder throbs in pain, and he vows to make her pay for this inconvenience later. Dumping her onto her bed, he stumbles upon an unsettling discovery. Hidden weapons, many not standard issue, including poisons and hidden blades. She really might be a spy, he realizes. Then, he spots the crest on a ring she's wearing. It's from the Lavelle family, renowned swordsman nobility. Now Kane's in trouble. He paces, sweating. If word gets out that he's been training a spy, they'll fire him, or worse, cut his pay. He briefly contemplates ending her right here to cover his tracks but chuckles darkly at the thought. What am I thinking? For a hero material like her, average crises are only stepping stones to make her stronger. Meanwhile, Serena dreams of the past, where her father, once a great swordsman, had fallen ill, because he made himself sick attempting to pass down the swordsmanship of the Sword of Stone that had become outdated over time, which caused her family to collapse. She couldn't let her father's effort go in vain. So she decided to find a way to rebuild the family as his successor. That's when she had the idea to restore the family's honor by mastering all 3 of the great sword arts, including the battlefield blaze. Suddenly her father called for her warmly. She smiled and rushed to him like a child. She thought he was feeling better. She hugged him, informing him that she had an idea. That's when she felt his cold hands that stained her face. He tells her the future of the Lavelle family is up to her. Her father's words echo in her mind. And she wakes up. She glanced at Kane in the corner of the room with her family ring. Immediately Kane asks, "Are you really from the Lavelle family?" Serena's heart skips a beat. Without warning, Kane throws a shuriken at her, but Serena dodges it effortlessly. Her cover is blown. She has to escape, but Serena wondered, why am I in his office and not in a torture room? What could he be planning? Kane explained, I heard your family has fallen from grace, but still, what's a descendant of the renowned Lavelle family doing here? Doesn't any shred of pride remain in that rusty stone sword of yours? He let the words hang, watching her expression. The way she gritted her teeth told him he'd hit a nerve. So, she's still just a kid, he thought. Sensing a distraction, Serena used the moment to reach for her shuriken, ready to strike. But Kane smirked. Do you even have the courage to wipe the rust off that stone sword? She froze, wondering, how does he know about my sword? But seeing her startled expression, he knew his bluff had landed. He continued, You know, right? The 3 great arts of swordsmanship, when it comes to mortal blows, they're legendary. First is the Lavelle Sword of Stone, second is Death's Shadow's Shadow Slash, and the third, well, it's the art that can set the battlefield ablaze. As he explains, his shoulder is aching, but he gotta keep that poker face on. Kane moved closer, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, his face hardened to keep up the intimidating front. She realized that in front of her? His battlefield blaze, descendant of a renowned family of swordmasters. She eyed him, puzzled. What's the descendant of the battlefield blaze doing here? Cain shrugged. Same reason as you. The last of the first sword masters. Just like you, I have to keep my true identity under wraps. She furrowed her brow, thinking, why would he reveal something so personal? Cain thought, if she believes we share the same goal, she'll trust me more easily. Why are you telling me all this? She asked, skeptical. Cain leaned in, lowering his voice dramatically. Because I know the basics of battlefield blaze and shadow slash, but it's incomplete. I don't know what side effects there might be. And without genius-level skill, it's impossible to start training. He kept his poker face, hoping she wouldn't see through his intentions. Maybe she'll even volunteer as a test subject, he thought, chuckling inside. If I teach it to you, he continued, you'll need determination. Because this technique could cost you your life. Serena hesitated, thinking over the offer. Are you saying you'll take me on as your secret apprentice? She asked, uncertain. Cain gave a twisted grin. Yes. It'll be our secret. But Cain was laughing inside, thinking, she's as good as dead. The next morning, Cain dropped heavy iron weights in front of her with a loud clang. Strengthening your legs is important for swordsmanship, he said. So from now on, train with these. Serena stared, raising an eyebrow. Isn't this a bit much? I'm still growing, you know. But this training wasn't meant to make her stronger. Cain hoped it would break her. He added, here's some salve for any side effects. Handing her a concoction he'd prepared. Serena took it, wondering if this was how he trained himself. But the salve was a phony. He was banking on her getting an infection. 10 days passed. Serena could barely stand and was wobbly. Suddenly she fainted, which alarmed the other students. Cain thought she was like the walking undead. But 20 days later, and Serena was still training, stronger and more resilient than ever. Cain watched in disbelief, realized that he was in deeper waters now. What kind of monster is she? Instead of destroying her, this training is just making her stronger. Serena, seeing his worried expression, inquired about his well-being. He told her it's nothing. I'll have to try something else. He feigned composure and said, now that you know the basics, we'll start the real training tomorrow. So go on and rest. Serena brightened, thinking she'd earned his approval. Little did she know, tomorrow was a trap. After she left, Cain took a deep breath, cursing his luck. Even a strong young man wouldn't last 15 days under this brutal training, he thought, and she survived 30. How am I going to get rid of her? Later, a young, silver-haired man with sharp eyes strolled in, smirking. I hear you've been spending a lot of time with number 7 lately, he teased. Cain drank his coffee and responded, she's just consulting me about the training. He inquires if he has feelings for the student. Cain, caught off guard, spat out his coffee. Have you lost your mind? He snapped. Where'd you even hear that rumor? The silver-haired guy responded, seems a little off for you to be acting this way. It seems the ice instructor has melted. The silver-haired man exited the room and gave a sly smile and swiped a paper from Cain's desk before walking out. Meanwhile, number 23 had overheard something and kept her distance, curious. The next day, Cain explained, the shadow slash aims for vital points. Battlefield blaze forces an opponent to give you an opening, and the sword of stone can break through defenses. Each is a mortal blow technique, but they're entirely different styles. If the techniques aren't combined just right, it could end in disaster. He demonstrated the moves, unleashing a fiery barrage of attacks that seared the surrounding trees. This, he boasted, is the red flame. Inwardly, he winced at the strain on his wrist but maintained his tough facade. Serena looked on in awe, convinced of his power. Cain continued, if you combine Sword of Stone with this technique I created, you'll wield a blade that can cut through anything in a single stroke. But be prepared, it could end your life. Serena nodded. If it's possible, I'll master it. Cain, exasperated, sighed. If you're so eager to die, I won't stop you. Training starts tomorrow. Inside, he smirked. I'll train her so hard that she'll pass on to the next life. A year passed. Cain grumbled. Training ends today. The once slim, delicate girl now stood before him strong and battle-hardened. But from Cain's distorted perspective, she seemed more like a hulking, unstoppable force. Cain told her, Swordsmanship isn't everything. You need to understand other things, too. Serena blinked. Like what? Inwardly, he just wanted her out of his sight, but instead, he began teaching her about various subjects. 10 days of intense knowledge sessions went by, covering everything from psychology to magic. His knowledge was as broad as a scholar. Serena couldn't help but wonder, who is he, really? As she left his office, a man approached her. We need to talk, he said, his tone serious. The instructor of Sector 4 told me you've been spending a lot of time with the instructor of Sector 5, she responded. It's because she's from the 5th Training Center. He approached her slowly, telling her not to act stupid. With a cold tone, I knew who you were from the very beginning, a spy from La Vale. Tell me your secrets, or face the consequences. Serena clenched her jaw. If you walk away now, I won't use my sword. But the man laughed. Oh, really? Threatening an instructor, are we? He lunged at her, but in one swift motion, Serena blocked, and struck back harder than she intended. He fell, dead in an instant. She gasped, horrified. She hadn't meant to destroy him, just to scare him off. She knew he specialized in intelligence, but who could have guessed he'd be so weak? But now it was clear her cover was blown. She had to escape. Meanwhile, Kane was roused from a nap by number 23 bursting through the door. Number 7 Unalived, the 3rd Center's instructor, and ran. Kane frowned. The organization has suspected her all along, and now that means I'm a suspect too. He asked which way she'd gone, and number 23 revealed. She headed west. The 1st and 2nd instructors are after her, and the 4th is likely following. Thinking fast, Kane ordered. Take the other students to headquarters and report with Instructor 4. I'll go after number 7 myself. Number 7 desperately informed him that number 1 ordered her to bring him. However, with a glare from Kane, she quickly closed her mouth in fear. Without waiting, he slipped through the window, moving into the woods to follow her trail. There, he noticed Serena had defeated the instructors with a single stroke. She even sliced through trees. She's more skilled and lethal than ever. She's unstoppable, he thought with a pang of regret. He ran deeper in the forest. There he saw her, exhausted, drenched in red liquid that wasn't hers, and breathing heavily. She began to unsheath her sword, clearly knowing he'd come, though she'd hoped their paths wouldn't cross. With a chilling tone, he confirmed that of course he'd come, but internally, he was alarmed as to why she'd drawn her blade. She muttered that, in the end, she'd betrayed those who'd trained her. She then charged at him, her resolve firm, yet something in her eyes wavered. Her blade pierced his chest, yet she was shocked to see him strike an enemy who had been sneaking up behind her. The fallen enemy, struck down by the instructor, was flabbergasted, feeling betrayed by his own comrade. She paused, confused. How had that enemy gotten behind her? And why did Kane strike him instead of her? Kane explained calmly that she had let her emotions cloud her focus, missing the enemy at her back. The truth, though, was that he knew that enemy would have targeted him next regardless. He remarked on her naivety, calling her reckless. However, he was panicking since she stabbed him in the shoulder again. Ignoring the pain, he handed her a small pouch, telling her it was for her escape and that she should follow the map inside. She accepted it with surprise, realizing he was helping her even after she tried to end his life. She questioned his kindness, and he clarified that she was just bait to him now. With the organization against them both, he also needed to flee. She then asked if simply acting as bait was enough to repay him. He pondered what's with her, so he came to the conclusion that she thought the map wasn't enough, which made him wonder if she was rejecting the map. He assured her that he didn't expect more and thought to himself he just wanted her gone immediately. Grateful but baffled, she took the money, musing if this was truly his way of helping her survive. But he was heartbroken she didn't refuse. He urged her to go, remarking internally that he'd never meet a student as stubbornly tied to his destructive sword technique again. She turned around, wondering if he just laughed. Later, under the full moon, Kane faced a group of instructors on a cliff. One woman questioned if he had chosen his apprentice over the organization, to which he retorted that he'd had no choice. She then drew her sword, telling him she'd allow him to die as a swordsman in his final moments. He appreciated her consideration, but wished he could face her at full strength. Noticing his injury, she guessed it was the second instructor's doing. Cain denied it. She remarked that it was a pity she couldn't beat him at his best. As she lunged, she taunted him to fight with his all, and their swords clashed, igniting his blazing sword technique. She acknowledged his skill, noting that their different Moroblow sword techniques each had unique strengths. Their intense battle played out, each exploiting the weaknesses of the other's techniques. Although theoretically, Cain's battlefield blaze could counter her shadow slash, his injury put him at a disadvantage, and he was worn down by her relentless attacks. She seized him by the neck. He drops his sword on the ground. She observed that if it weren't for his shoulder wound, the outcome might have been different. He told her, with a stoic grin, that a swordsman has no need for sympathy, and vowed that she wouldn't take his student's life easily. She smirked, promising to send the Lavale heir to join him soon enough. With one final thrust, she removed her sword from him and let him fall off the cliff, believing he was dead. She then resolved to go after Serena. Elsewhere, Serena used the survival skills Cain had taught her to evade the other instructors. These skills, honed in life or death scenarios, kept her alive despite relentless pursuit. She wondered what kind of life he must have led to gain such abilities, but she knew she could never ask him now. Suddenly she was surrounded. The first instructor and the Shadows of Sword, an elite unit, had trapped her. The first instructor offered to spare her life if she surrendered, but Serena was skeptical, suspecting a worse fate awaited her. The instructor remarked that she never expected the fifth instructor's apprentice to give up anyways, as he could teach no more. Serena, stunned, learned that Cain had sacrificed himself to ensure she escaped. The instructor noted that, like her, he had joined the organization for its sword art. Once one shares their swordsmanship, they lose value and become disposable. Cain had protected her, knowing it would mean his death. Serena clenched her sword, devastated by the realization. The first instructor scoffed, urging her to prepare for her fate, but Serena struck with deadly precision, dispatching her attackers in a blur of rage. All that was left for her now was her sword. She was destined, as a swordsman, to lose what mattered for the sake of her blade. So, she continued down the blood-stained path. Meanwhile, Cain stirred. Despite his injuries, his plan had worked barely. When he fell from the cliff, Cain pulled out a rope attached to a parachute that deployed just in time, allowing him to drift down safely. He was alive, and that's all that mattered to him. The world could mock him or judge him, it made no difference. Granted, he was now jobless, and his severance pay was gone, but survival was survival. He laughed bitterly about the hard times ahead, especially without a steady paycheck. Guess I'm a low-grade villain scraping by now, he thought. Meanwhile, Serena lifted her sword to the sky, vowing to keep her promise to Cain. She swore she'd survive no matter what and repay her debt. She declared she would keep her oath until her last drop of blood fell. Though the two were separated, both knew only they could understand this strange farewell. Later, Serena found herself munching on a snake with an unusual taste. A young boy nearby asked her, in broken common, if she was from the Empire and if she regularly ate snakes. She explained that she was used to exotic food. Venomous snakes helped build poison resistance, though it might outlive those not used to it. The boy asked why she was in the jungle. Serena responded that she was there to train, though finding a guide in the jungle's depths was challenging. Laughing, the boy warned that people here might not fear the jungle, but Shada was another story. He explained that Shada was a demon, something like a human-eating ghost in the Empire's language. He showed her scars, claiming that Shada was to blame, and advised her to beware. She contemplated the injury aimed for the vital point of the body. The level of skill was similar to the first instructor. Maybe it's still in the jungle. Late that night, she pondered his words. If ghosts do exist, she thought wistfully, perhaps I could see my father, or Cain, one last time. In another scene, Serena was suddenly attacked by a snow-wielding woman named Seville. Once hailed as a hero, Seville now seemed exhausted by the role. She coldly told Serena that someday she'd see how empty heroism was, full of destruction and hollow praise. If you're curious to know sooner, Seville said, I'll show you myself. With a flick, she summoned ice spirits and countless icicles to strike at Serena. Serena's eyes shot open as she jolted awake, grabbing the snake she'd been eating as it tried to slither away. She threw the snake through the window. It had been a nightmare, but it brought memories of her past, and she realized that 3 years had flown by. She traveled across continents, building her family's reputation and even defeating the mighty demon Kurda. But she couldn't shake thoughts of Seville's fury. What had turned the once praised hero into a bandit? A knock at her door snapped her out of it. The boy introduced himself as Rajia, a local guide. Serena raised an eyebrow, surprised by how young he was, and hesitantly agreed to let him guide her into the dangerous jungle. Meanwhile, Cain was reading a mission letter instructing him to reach the southern village and carry out the mission. He became frustrated at the thought that his organization had sent him to the ends of the earth. Finding a guide, however, was proving expensive. Just then, he spotted Rajia and asked him about finding someone to take him to the last village. Rajia laughed, mentioning there were only 2 guides who knew the way and that Cain had better hurry. Cain hadn't walked far when, out of nowhere, something heavy smacked onto his head. It was a white snake, which bit him before slithering away. Cursing his luck, he quickly drank his antidote and muttered, "Why a white poisonous snake, of all things?" Through the window, he glimpsed a figure, whom he immediately suspected had tossed the snake on purpose. But he knew that, if confronted, they'd just claim it was an accident. Muttering threats under his breath, he vowed to pay them back someday. Suddenly, a cheerful kid approached Cain, asking if he was hungry and holding another white snake. Cain's expression darkened. The kid urged him to try it. It was free, after all. Cain, now out of patience, sliced the snake in one blow, leaving the kid wide-eyed in horror. "Why are you giving me this?" Cain snapped. The kid stammered that it was a traditional dish. Cain scoffed, assuming they probably gave clueless tourists poison to sell them the antidote later. The kid stammered apologies, and Cain, sensing an opportunity, asked if he'd be his guide. The kid looked petrified and tried to wiggle out of it, but Cain grabbed him by the head, leaving him no choice but to agree. Their journey wasn't smooth. They soon found themselves in a swamp,